The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept his share of responsibility, quell the brewing unrest, and ensure President-elect Biden is able to successfully begin his term. The greatest statesman in the history of our country understood that the most dangerous threat to freedom is lawlessness. A young lawyer named Abraham Lincoln famously said, "There is no grievance that is a fit object of redress by mob law." Yet for several hours last week, mob law tried to interfere with constitutional law. Some say the riots were caused by Antifa. There is absolutely no evidence of that. And conservatives should be the first to say so.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy with that rebuke of the president on the House floor yesterday, though he did vote not to impeach. McCarthy has argued for the president to be censured instead. Meanwhile, members of the Freedom Caucus want Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney to resign from her post as chair of the House Republican Conference. Bloomberg reports that 3 members of the 44-member caucus began circulating a petition yesterday to force a special meeting to vote on a resolution for her resignation. Only 42 members of the House GOP are required to sign the petition in order to hold the meeting, but a majority would need to vote to adopt it. That vote would take place by secret ballot. Cheney responded to the effort with the following statement about her vote to impeach the president. Quote, "I'm not going anywhere. This is a vote of conscience. It's one where there are different views in our conference, but our nation is facing an unprecedented since the Civil War constitutional crisis. That's what we need to be focused on. That's where our efforts and attention need to be."
Let's bring in right now NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent and a host of Way Too Early, Casey Hunt. You know, Casey, this was a very difficult vote for 10 Republicans to make. But when it comes to Liz Cheney, they need to handle that situation with care, because right now they're pariahs. I'm not talking about the 10 people that voted against sedition. I'm talking about people like Kevin McCarthy and members of the Freedom Caucus. If they think they're going to get any money from any companies, any corporations, any interests on K Street after voting to disqualify millions and millions of black votes, to pass sort of their own version of new Jim Crow laws, or try to, they're out of their minds. Liz Cheney may be the only bridge from this crazed GOP House caucus and
to a future,
the respectable world.
It's a reckoning right now, Joe. What do they want to be? And Kevin McCarthy, in that bite we played coming in here, he tried to walk that line. He tried to say, OK, I don't want this remedy. I don't want impeachment. But he also was clear that President Trump bears responsibility. And I think what he's reflecting is the deep divisions that exist, concerns about money, absolutely. But had this vote in the House been a secret ballot, all of my reporting indicates it would have been more like 50 or 60 Republicans who would have voted to impeach Donald Trump. And some of them, I mean, we've reported extensively, have said that they were afraid for their lives. Others, of course, are making a political calculation and saying, I don't want to take that political risk for myself. I'm not willing to go out on this limb the way that Liz Cheney was willing to, calling this a vote of conscience. But it tells you that Kevin McCarthy, who is trying to lead this group of people, he is trying to figure out how to walk that line. And, you know, he has made political calculations all the way along here. He has his share of critics in terms of how he has dealt with this president, because he has been my Kevin all the way along here. But
hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.